ਦਸਾਂ ਪਾਤਸ਼ਾਹੀਆਂ ਦੀ ਜੋਤ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਗੁਰੂ ਗ੍ਰੰਥ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਜੀ ਦੇ ਪਾਠ ਦਰਸ਼ਨ ਦੀਦਾਰ ਦਾ ਧਿਆਨ ਧਰ ਕੇ ਬੋਲਣਾ ਜੀ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ। ਇਹ ਨਿਮਾਣਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਮਾਣ ਕਾਰਨ ਕਰਨ ਪਿਤਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀਓ, ਆਪ ਜੀ ਦੀ ਅਪਾਰ ਬਖਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਮਿਹਰ ਦਾ ਸਦਕਾ ਸਾਈਬਰ ਸੰਗਤ ਜੁੜੀ ਸਰਬੱਤ ਦੇ ਸਿਰ ਤੇ ਮਿਹਰ ਭਰਿਆ ਹੱਥ ਰੱਖ ਕੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਗੁਰਬਾਣੀ ਦੀ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਆਪ ਕਰਾਣੀ, ਅੱਖਰ ਵਾਧਾ ਘਾਟਾ ਭੁੱਲ ਚੁੱਕ ਮਾਫ ਕਰਨੀ, ਸਰਬੱਤ ਦੇ ਕਾਰਜ ਰਾਸ ਕਰਨੇ, ਸਹੀ ਪਿਆਰੇ ਮੇਲਣੇ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਮਿਲਿਆ ਆਪ ਜੀ ਦਾ ਨਾਮ ਚਿਤਾਵੇ, ਨਾਨਕ ਨਾਮ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ ਤੇਰੇ ਭਾਣੇ ਸਰਬੱਤ ਦਾ ਭਲਾ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।
ਹਾਂਜੀ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। Ravinder Singh again. We are today going to kick off a sort of a concluding discussion because we are at stanza 38. 38ਵੀਂ ਪੌੜੀ ਤੇ ਆ Japji Sahib, and many years ago I had sort of written a small piece on the 38th pori, and I just share a couple of thoughts with you folks. I had called it the alchemy of transformation because I rather was taken up with the idea that Guruji had used in this stanza, that of a goldsmith who actually is using an alchemical process to transform baser metals to gold. And I felt that this was a beautiful way of illustrating the need for us to transform our lower manmukh nature to that of a gurmukh. That's how I felt when I wrote that, and I think I still feel that way. I think this is a beautiful analogy, a beautiful allegory that we need to dwell on. And generally speaking, I think the general conventional view is that this pauri pretty much sums up Japji Sahib, if you will. And Guruji is here introducing to us in his usual fashion, a very sort of densely packed, terminology. I mean, it is so rich. Every word is so rich that we could sort of spend a lifetime trying to unpack it. But nonetheless, I think I feel quite excited about listening to you folks. So let's get started. Do we have a volunteer for reading out the passage? Dilpreet Singh ji, do you want to volunteer?
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਪੜ੍ਹ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਜੀ।
ਹਾਂਜੀ।
ਜਤ ਪਹਾਰਾ ਧੀਰਜ ਸੁਨਿਆਰ, ਅਹਰਣ ਮਤ ਵੇਦ ਹਥਿਆਰ, ਪਉ ਖਰਲਾ ਅਗਨ ਤਪ ਤਾਓ, ਭਾਂਡਾ ਪਾਓ ਅੰਮ੍ਰਿਤ ਤਿਤ ਢਾਲ, ਘੜੀਐ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਸੱਚੀ ਟਕਸਾਲ, ਜਿਨ ਕੋ ਨਦਰ ਕਰਮ ਤਿਨਕਾਰ, ਨਾਨਕ ਨਦਰੀ ਨਦਰ ਨਿਹਾਲ। ਹਾਂਜੀ।
Sanjay, thank you. Since you've done the reading, do you want to go first and kick off the discussion and give us your take on this part?
Hanji, I can give it a try. So, as you said that this is the transformation, or this is how a goldsmith turns a metal into a beautiful ornament, and then that ornament is loved by everyone. So I was also thinking along the same lines. Like in Dharam Khand we have talked about the understanding, then Gyan Khand we have talked about the knowledge, and then Saram Khand is the planning, or we seek who we want to be and we think creative, and then the Karam Khand is we put things into action and we try to be that person or practice creativity, and then Sach Khand is the experience, or we become that person, or that is we become a creator, or we become a sub creator under the bigger creator. That's how I was thinking. So now in this body, I think Guruji is taking example of a goldsmith and his shop, and then he is taking that and he's putting all of these things together into one, and he's showing us that how these things can be practiced. So along the same line, he's talking about Jat, which is, I feel it is the discipline, and then he's saying that implementing the discipline, and then Tiraj Sunyar, that by Tiraj I am taking it that we have to implement discipline, and then at the same time we don't have to lose the patience. because we should have faith in your plan or what we are trying to do, and which is based on the knowledge or the understanding. So that is where the patience is very important. And then in the next stanza, Ahran mat ved hathyar, again the way I am saying that Guruji is saying that use your mind and new knowledge to tweak your plans and keep improving it. Don't be a standing water or kind of thing that this is what it is. At the same time, be watchful and use your mind, be aware of your surroundings. And so we have to be the watchdogs, and we have to put the corrective measures there. And then pau kharla agan taptao, that is that operate under or in line with the bigger whole, or operate under the truth and apply hard work. That is agan taptao, that we have to put hard work also into it. And then panda pao amrit tittal, that operate under love, not in fear, and our decisions should be love based, and it should not be fear based, and we should get over this survival based decisions, and this is when we will enjoy the real happiness. And then moving to the next line, Kadiye Shabad Sachi Taksal. So this is where that this is how we will create ourselves. So as you gave the example of a goldsmith who is creating the ornament. So Kadiye Shabad Sachi Taksal, that this is how we will create yourself, and we will become a different person under the light or guidance of Gurbani, whatever we have learned so far. And then there was a good summary in 4 khands. So this is where the change will become, and we have to create ourselves to become a different person. And now Jinko Nadar Karam Tinkar. So again, I was trying to think just out of the box that if you do this, or if you attempt to change ourselves, then only we will get the outcome. Once we put hard work, we put the right thinking, and we put the hard work into it, that is where the results will come. So that is what that Jinko Nadar Karam Tinkar, that as per this system, if we plan and we put hard work behind it, so this is what God's grace is, that as per that system the same type of outcome will come. If you sow, there are many examples in Gurbani that if you sow a seed of apple, you will get an apple plant, you will not get a mango plant. So that is where the grace is. And then Nanak Nadri Nadar Nihal, that this is his grace which controls the output, and it will be as per the input and no other way around. So that is what, again, I think it is a symbolism of the whole system, that whatever we sow we will get results, and we should not blame anybody else. So this is a very good example that how we can put things into action and be creative and be recreate ourselves to be a different person. Thank you ji.
Thank you, Dilpreet, for that very insightful explanation. I'd be very interested for all of you to actually spend a little bit of time on Jinko Nadar Karam Tinkar. I think there is a message here that we need to unpack a little bit, and also Kariye Sabad Sachi Taksal, it seems to me, is a reference here to perhaps that is what we need to understand, which is the Shabad that is being coined. So with that in mind, let me reach out to you, Eileen, get your take on this.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. I think those two lines definitely are intriguing, but I also just starting at the top a little bit too. I had an observation that occurred to me based on the metaphors that were being used, and then also kind of maybe even just a meta observation I would just share with people, because I don't know if this is true for others as well. But in looking at the meanings of the words, as I go kind of always by word to try to translate, I often get a little bit torn between the symbolism and then also just the sort of visual metaphor or the words that are being used. And I think this is a really good example for me that I was particularly, I particularly feel the visual metaphor of this goldsmith very strongly. And so I think there's a lot of meaning to that versus just sort of translating the words as code for other concepts. Which I also kind of go back and forth doing. So I would just say that the image that came to my mind, thinking about this goldsmith, was all of the different khans. We talked about, do these khans kind of, how do they exist in relation to each other? And the image that I had in my mind was the goldsmith hammering all of the different facets and turning the material over and over again and hammering another side and turning it around and hammering another side. Because that's just sort of the image that I imagine of, what this kind of smithy kind of work looks like. And so that those facets of hammering and turning over another side and turning over another side resonated to me as similar to the various khans. And so I think that was just an observation I wanted to share first from the top. So
sure.
I don't want to go all the way through the other part.
Okay. Hanji, Paramjit Singh ji, Ranaji, if you're there, what do you think this Pauri is saying to you?
Waheguru Ji Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh Ji. Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I spent a little time trying to understand this one, and it raises some questions as I try to answer and try to understand what Guru Sahib has said in this Pauri. One thing to me, as you said, Ravinder Singh ji, that this is, to me, the earlier 37 Pauris, as someone earlier pointed out, is a cluster of different concepts Guru Sahib has given us over the first 37 Pauris. And now here what he is doing is giving us a collective message which has basically come out of the 37 Pauris. And the beauty of this Pauri is that Guru Sahib has tried to represent it by illustrating it in such a way a common person can understand it. But when I read this Pauri, my focus is only on few words, because all of the words are being used, in my opinion anyways, in a metaphorical sense. One word is Jat, and second is Tiraj, patience, and then Mat, which is intellect, then Ved, which is the knowledge. Then going further, Pao, which is the fear of God, and Pao, that Panda Pao, that the love what we have, and then the word Amrit.
And we lost you, Veerji.
Ourselves to Guru Shabad, Guru Shabad, Guru Shabad. And
so Veerji, we lost you for a little bit there. Can you, do you mind going, do you mind retracing 30 seconds?
Okay. What I was saying, that the few words in this one, like Jat is one word where we are talking about controlling the sense.
You were at Pao.
Okay, Pao, Panda Pao, and then finally the word is Kadiye Shabad. The whole, when we read Guru Granth Sahib, the question comes that we have to attach ourselves to Shabad, Guru Shabad. That is our Guru Shabad, Guru. And Guru Sahib is saying how to cultivate that Guru Shabad, and what he is telling to me, the way I understand, is that one thing is we have to learn to self-discipline ourselves to keep control those 5 vices we talk about, Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Ahankar, which activate or which act upon us through our sensory organs. That's where the Jat thing comes in. But then what is very interesting to me is patience is kept separate. The patience is paramount. Somehow Guru Sahib is saying that you have to be patient. This process is not going to happen in an instant, but you have to practice this. You have to have the patience. You have to have that type of courage and determination that this thing will come along. But then Guru Sahib is saying that, but you have to develop your intellect based on Gyan. No, I don't understand the Gyan, Guru Sahib. They are talking about the Shabad Gyan, which Shabad we are trying to cultivate, or Gyan, which we are getting with Gurbani. Well, how that is different, that's a separate question. But what I'm trying to understand, what I'm trying to think is, Guru Sahib is saying that use that Gyan to cultivate your intellect and have patience, and through that patience try to have self-discipline, and at the same time have fear of God. Once you have fear of God, and then you can have through Naam Amrit di Gal, talking Amrit Tal, that cultivate name Naam jedi gal ho rahi hai, we still have to talk about what Naam is. But my understanding of Naam is again is something very elusive right now. But what I'm trying to understand or trying to say is that in your physical existence is your mind. Try to cultivate that naam, and that's the only way. Once you do these things, that's the only way that Shabbat is going to come into you. Then the next two lines raises another question, Jinko another karam tinkar. But the whole process, again we go back to why we fear God, why we praise God, why we seek His grace. Jinko another karam tinkar. I don't understand this thing, that how we are going to do this one, because ultimately it is up to Him who is going to provide us His grace, and we are going to be able to do it. That's my understanding. Vaheguru Ji Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Fateh.
Thank you, Ji. Thank you for that insight. It is very interesting indeed that Guruji has used the metaphors here of a furnace, of a crucible, and a mint, basically, and because it's almost like a purgatory where you come out of this purified, like a metal is in a smelting operation. But we'll come back to some of these concepts again. But let me ask Veerji Gurjit Singh Ji, please share your thoughts on this, Pauri.
हाँ जी, वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा, वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह. Is there some disturbance? कि ठीक है?
ठीक है जी.
Okay जी. Yeah, this is basically the continuation from the last four Char Khand, where there was an indication of Karam Khand ki Bani Zor, that Bani which is to be spoken to us from there. How to reach that stage is basically how the Shabad will come to us through Apuran Brahma. So this is a process where he starts Jat Pahara. Pahara word actually. Pahara, Tiraj Sunyar. Hara is a place in our villages where we normally put the milk to boil. I don't know if someone knows that. It's a term which we used in I don't think so people use it anymore. We used to put the cow dung cakes and the milk used to boil the whole day. That was a hara, where there's a heat and it used to boil slowly. So, but the thing is, it's ultimately a sentient thing, but the examples have been taken from here and there, from the worldly thing. So Jat, let's try to define what Jat actually means in Gurmat, because that term has not been used before in Japji Sahib. If you read from Gurbani, it says Jat Sat Sanjam Naam hai. Where Naam hai Nirmal na hui. So Jat is nothing but it's a part of Naam or Gyan. Pure bhag Naam man vasai, Shabdi milawa hui. So the Gur Shabad, that's how it is associated. That the Gur Shabad, the acceptance of Gur Shabad or Naam is basically what? We have Jat. So when we have to go through this system, Jat Pahara, so the first thing is that we have to bring this mind, we want to mold our thought process. So it has to come into the heart. Pahara is like a furnace, or we can say more like a workshop. Sahib Singh has used a shop, but I'll say it's a workshop. We are bringing your mind into the workshop, and you have to work like, an example is the best Guru Nanak has chosen is a Sunyar. Sunyar is a goldsmith. He deals very delicately with that expensive metal. So we have to deal the same way. We have to mold it slowly. They also say so sanyardi ikluhardi. So the goldsmith will hit 100 times, whereas blacksmith will only hit 1 time. So it has to be done patience and with a lot of composure. So this is how the molding will take place. Ahar and mat, there need to be a support where you have to put your mind, which is to be molded. It is on the mat, it's gurmat. Ved Hathyar. Now he has particularly used the word Ved because Gurbani is a Ved. So the Ved has to be used as a tool if we need to basically change its shape. We have to change its shape. And Mat has ultimately told us that this is not a real situation outside, but it is taking inside us. But the examples have been taken. Khala. So Khala used to be an instrument in the olden times which used to inject oxygen basically to keep the heat up. They used to use embers, and then you have to constantly give a heat so that the heat is up. Because if you're trying to take the heat away, then the thing will basically again get hard. So there's a constant paw. Paw is of the hukam. The paw of the hukam will keep this.
Harvinder, I can't hear you.
Now melt this now. Hanji.
Haji, we lost you there. At least I lost you.
Okay, so the panda is nothing but the heart. There is a furnace, and within the furnace there is a pot in which the gold is there, in which the money is there. This will then slowly, if you constantly give it that heat of power, which is hukam, then it should basically melt and mold itself into that shape which the Gurmukh wants. Now, this is also known as Panni Kadi Savanvi. We also say, Freji says, firstly you have to break it and then remold it. So this is now remolded. So Kadiya Shabad, now it has basically been remolded. Now it will utter the Shabad, because the Shabad it is hearing from Sachkhand. Sachkhand Vasen Rankar is not in any kind of voice. It's just basically a furna. So it's just a signal which it is now converted into Gurmukhi for us. And Shabad is not a single word, it's a whole composition. If Japji Sahib has got 38 Pauris, so there we can say 38 Shabads. This is how the Shabads are constructed and given to us for our benefit, so that we can also become, we can use the same analogy to become one with Sachkhand. So, Kariye Shabad Sachi Taksal, Jinko Nadar Karam Tunkar. But this is all an effort. This can't be done at your own effort. You have to always seek the blessing. You have to always get the nadar from the Sachkhand. It's not your is the effort, but the nadar comes from there. Nanak Nadri, Nadar Nihal. Nanak says, I have followed the process, and the nadri, the Sachkhand has given me. The nadar and Nihal means that I am now residing in Sachkhand. So this is how I take it, that this is a process, how your normal wisdom will become Gurmukhi wisdom, and then that Gurmukhi wisdom should be able to connect you through our local language back to Sachkhand. Thank you, Ji.
Hanji, thank you, Veerji. Harvinder Singh Ji, would you like to pipe in a little?
I only have a question regarding if someone can clarify more. Panda Pao Amrit Titkal. What Amrit is referred here, and
Okay, so I'll open this up. Maybe we'll do a round. Dilpreet Singh Ji, do you want to address that? I'll give everybody a chance to talk about it.
Hanji. I think earlier, Virji, you pointed out that on that other line, that which was that Kadiye Shabad Sachi Taksal, that what is the Shabad here? The way I was thinking on this is that Japji Sahib starts with the question that Kiv Sachiara Hoya, Kiv Kude Tutte Paal. I think that is being answered in every podis of Japji Sahib. It is an effort that how we will become a Sachiar. So the implementation of this will recreate ourselves. So as the goldsmith is recreating the same metal into an ornament, so implementing of this will recreate ourselves. So this is the Kadiye Shabad. I take it that implementing Gurbani into our lives and recreating ourselves as per Gurbani.
Hanji, but Harvinder had a question around Amrit Kadiye, Pariye Amrit Titatal.
Right. Kadiye. So this is Panda Pao Amrit Tal. The way I am thinking, this Pao is love, and that if we want, I am thinking that this is the resemblance of that Amrit, that everybody is looking for Amrit. So people were trying to do anything to get that Amrit so that they will not die. But Gurbani's Amrit is the real happiness, and living in that under his happiness 24/7 in this life. That is what I feel Gurbani's Amrit is. So then I think Guruji is telling us that this is where once Panda is Pao, means you operate under the love, and then the real happiness will come in you, and this is the way the real Amrit, or to enjoy that Amrit 24/7 and enjoying that happiness 24/7. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Eileen. Do you want to take a stab at Harvinder's question about Amrit Titatal and Pao?
Sure. I was reading these the lines connected. So I was reading first this Baukhala Agantap Tao was it's kind of the opposite in a way, or sort of it's the first part before you get to the Amrit melting. So I was thinking about the bellows and the fire that that is a very passionate stage, or the sphere of God. This description of having the fire in you that is the fear of God, and the passionate devotion is how I always think this Tup Tao. And then that connects then to the vessel of love that is where the melted Amrit resides. So it's melted by the.
So is the Amrit here some sort of an unfinished product that needs to be sort of converted here through this process? Because Amrit, to my mind, is something that we are all seeking, right? So when Guruji says pouring of Amrit, is that just one of the elements that we have to pour in there? I think that's where Harvinder is coming from.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I was just thinking about the Amrit being like the nectar, and thinking about that visually as something melted in a vessel and that's heated up by the bellows. And so I was drawing from that image.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, Ranaviji, do you want to further this thought?
Hanji, I have very similar questions. But when I use those words, jat, tiraj, patience, and self-discipline, I ignored other things. The reason being that those are the metaphors Guru Sahib has done very nicely for us to understand. Coming back to word Amrit, when I look at the word Amrit, I look at the word Ved at the same time and the Shabad at the same time. I, with my limited understanding, try to understand Gurbani. I see that word Amrit and Naam, meditation on Naam, which has been used in Guru Granth Sahib many times. I use these synonymously, Amrit and Naam. So it is that Panda po Amrit Tikal, that is with love and meditation, you transform your physical, your mental state, your spiritual state through that process. Amrit to me is Naam, okay? That's the way I think. But it raises question in my mind what Gurjeet Veer ji said. Shabad is ਜਿਹੜਾ Gurbani is whole Shabad, and Ved is also what Gurbani is. So to me, Shabad is also something different which I don't understand. So Shabad, Ved, and Amrit. Amrit is to me is Naam. Naam is different from Shabad. I don't know. People like Gurjeet Singh ji or some other people can enlighten me. So to come back to the answer, Amrit means Naam here, but then I raised two other questions. What is Shabad in line number 5 and how it is different from the word Ved in line number 2?
Thank you, Ji. Some interesting points here, and I think the same question or a similar question can be raised around Kadiye Savad Sachi Taksal. It could be because Kadiye suggests to me that there is some processing that has to be done. Kadiye means to sculpt. So we are sculpting or fashioning something. And then the issue, the question is, are you sculpting Shabad? And if so, Shabad already is perfect, right? So how could you possibly be perfecting something that already is perfect? Are you then suggesting that Shabad here might mean something, might be a synonym for something else? So those are the kinds of questions I think that we need to talk a little bit about.
Ravinder Singh,
Haji.
Just my quick thought on that, what you said. We are not trying to perfect Shabad. My understanding, Shabad is this is the way how we perfect Shabad into us. We are not perfecting Shabad. This is my understanding.
Haji. No, because it says Kadiye Shabad.
Yes, Kadiye Shabad.
That means you are fashioning Shabad in some way.
No, I thought Shabad, Kadiye Shabad in us. This is what the Kadiye Shabad in us.
But the line reads Kadiye Shabad Sachi Taksal. So the question then is, what is the Sachi Taksal, and which Shabad is being sharpened? Karna is also means sharpened. So what is being sharpened? Which Shabad is being sharpened here? I'll just throw that out there. Questions along with Amrit. So I think I've covered everybody except Gurjeet Singh Veer. Gurjeet Singh Veer, would you want to sort of comment, give us your sense of some of these questions that are coming up?
Hanji. Panda Pao, there is a vessel in which this man has to ultimately reside. But it can't reside until it attains an Amrit Roop. It was mentioned before. Na o Maran Thagi Amrit stage, because you are Puran Brahm, your man, which was ultimately stuck in Maya, is now basically back into you. So this man has taken an Amrit form, basically. And from here onwards, you will not be suffering the cycle of life and death. And it's from there, the Panda is the heart, from where you started. Jahate upajit mili. The man basically was born out of this Panda, and it has ultimately merged back into it. So this is how I see it, Panda, Pao, Amrit, and Talgyao, which it has molded itself. It had a shape, it had an akar of Maya and his own family of vikars. It has left everything under the top and basically has merged back into the Hirda, into its mool, and this is a state of Puran Brahm, and Puran Brahm is actually a real Amritari. This is an Amritari stage. And from here onwards, he can now speak the Sabad. He's in center. See, he's a connection, he's a mediator. He's getting the Shabad from Sachkhand, which is Shabad Guru, and he's converting it into his Kadiya, means he's molding it with some Maya into it and giving us to the Jeeves in Pavsagar. So he's the center person. Jaisa Satgur Sunida, तैसो ही, this is Satgur, तैसो ही मैं डीठ विछड़िया मेले प्रभु, असी विछड़े हुए हैं भव सागर. He puts us back into Sukh Sagar. So he is converting the Shabad Guru into Gur Shabad. Shabad Guru is not heard by our ears, but Gur Shabad we can read and we can hear, and that's what we are doing now. So this is how I see it.
Can I say something, Virji, whenever you...
Haji, Dilpreet Singh ji, go ahead. We'll do round number 3. We'll revert back to you. Go ahead.
Right. See, this... it made me think then when you asked these questions that what is being changed or what is being transformed here. So Panda Pao Amrit Tittal, the another thing which is coming to my mind is that once we apply love or operate under his love, that is where things will get softened and it will allow us to reshape them.
So how is that love identifiable? How do you know that you're acting under that love? What are the markers?
Right.
In
See,
your daily life?
this is where there is I was trying to, one Shabad comes that Suraj Kiran Mile Jal Ka Jal Hua Ram. So in that Shabad also Guruji is explaining that the way the light of sun falls on ice, it converts it changes its form. So that is the kind of role Gurbani is playing. Gurbani, once we apply Gurbani, it will soften us. And then the another Shabad which we discussed some time back was that Antkal jo Lakshmi Simre, Antkal jo Narayan Simre. So then all these decisions, right, whatever decisions we make, they are either fear-based or love-based decisions. So that is where I think Guruji is taking us. The whole Gurbani teaches us to get out of this fear-based or the survival-based decisions and to operate under the bigger whole and make the decisions under the truth or under the influence of love. I think that's how I see
So
it.
would you say then that based on the way you've described this, would you say then love here is also the same as compassion? Because acting out of fear or self-survival versus acting out of compassion, which is to be able to invite others into your space and to suffer with others.
Right. See, that is where I think operating under the hukam or compassion, operating and thinking out of this fear or your survival or thinking out of your just own benefit. That Shabad is very pretty. It says that Antakal jo ladke simre, that if your decisions are influenced by your family or if your decisions are influenced by just to attain money or if your decisions are influenced by you want a bigger house, and then Aribai Gobind Naam Mat Bisra, that is where the compassion or Naam or operating under the truth comes. Because that is the line of Raha. It says Aribai Gobind Naam Mat Bisra, that you operate under his Naam, and again Naam is the truth or compassion, or we can, I think those can be replaced with each other. I think Ravinder Virji, we lost Ravinder Virji.
Ji, Ravinder ji, are you back?
Yeah, I got interrupted by a phone call. I lost my train of thought here. Sorry, Eileen, were you talking?
No, it was me, Virji.
No, I know, Dilpreet. You kind of I know that we talked a little bit about compassion. I was asking you whether would it be fair to sort of say love is compassion here, meaning you're working for the larger good rather than being, survival based and self-centered. Eileen, do you want to take that forward?
Um, yes, I think that's an interesting way to connect it to some of the other parts of the Japji that talks about kind of social justice kind of concepts and Sangat. I think that's actually, yeah, I think that's probably true. I would also add, maybe just to connect the dots also a little further with the I agree with what Dilpreet Singh Ji was saying about the melting, because that's also, I think, part of that same idea that the love is transformative, right? So thinking about the melting heart, or the ability of love and compassion to transform a person. I think that's very similar. And so I think that transformation, as it happens from the raw material to the newly minted shape, as it transforms. First you get hammered, you have to get, you're stubborn, your mind is stubborn, you're getting hammered with the scripture, and then you're inspired by God and you become very passionate, fear of God, and there's a lot in Japji about just the awesomeness and feeling in awe of God, and then you become more open and melted by love and compassion, and that's what makes you. It's that element that makes you malleable to be shaped into Gurmukh. That's where you can take a new form and become minted, right? Because that's, I don't know, that's how I understand that minted aspect.
Sure. I was going to
it's
suggest,
like a coin.
I was going to suggest that. I mean, it appears to me that what is being minted here is the coin of one's individual life. That is what we are minting, right? And the mint is that of. It seems to me that is the shabad, the shabad of one's life is being basically sharpened here. But that's just a thought.
Well, is the shabad also sometimes referring to sort of that that origin of the piece of the creator that's within you as well? Is
that's where I'm going?
Also part of that?
That's where I'm going, because shabad, we are in some senses shabad because we have that possibility, and we are sound as well in some very fundamental and primal ways. So I didn't see, at least in my own mind, I didn't see any conflict in thinking of this particular shabad that's being transformed or sharpened or sculpted as being, because I'm basically sculpting my own life, and I'm using the true Gurbani as my support. I'm sort of melting in that, softening in that, as Dilpreet puts it. But I just wanted to put out the thought there. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's important about that element of the love, and I would add openness to willingness or acceptance, maybe that extra transformative step that I am reading into with the idea of love.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Anji. Ranadev.
Hanji, I was listening to Eileen, and the question, the way I was thinking about this one was last line, not the last, the fifth line, Kariye Shab Sachi Tiksal, how to mint Shabad into our life. Then I pose question to myself and to others. They have to make me understand what Shabad really mean. What does it mean to say Shabad? To me, Shabad was, I was thinking about Gurbani, the message of Gurbani, that is Shabad. You want to cultivate that, and the previous 4 lines are telling us these are the prerequisites. There's a process you have to go through. a process in which we talk about patience, we are talking about controlling the senses and the sensory organs and the things which feed into them, how to do, but the process is a process of patience. It is not a process we can take it in a haste or in an imprudent way. It has to be very prudent, slow process. That's the way I was thinking about that the whole process is how to cultivate Shabad.
Hanji,
Then we talked about it. At one point, I think we mentioned about compassion and love. I
Hanji.
was just thinking about that. I think compassion is necessary for love, but it's not sufficient. In other words, what I'm saying is that if somebody is really you love somebody, you have to have compassion for that person as well. But then having compassion only does not mean that that transforms itself into love. It's just a compassion stays at compassion. You're helping somebody, but love is much higher than compassion. That's the way I was thinking.
Hanji, thanks for that thought. I mean, my mind was, since you mentioned compassion, uh, it seems to me that my understanding of compassion within Gurmat is that at the end of the day, compassion is creativity itself. Um, Taram flows from compassion. Dol Taram, Daya Ka Poot. It seems to me that this whole process of creation is compassion based. But we'll go to Gurjit Singh Veji and then we'll maybe come back for a final round. Hanji Veji.
Anjali, these two terms, thank you. Yep. Pao and Pao has to be correlated. It has to start with a Pao that we should have some sort of driving force, that we are going to go to Sachkhand and what sort of discipline we need to follow. That comes from the Pao, that the mind should always be concentrated towards its mood. It shouldn't be concentrating away from it. So this is a Pao, this is a sort of fear which we should have, also known as Nirmal Pao. You you are not scared of losing anything, except that when Ravidas says, he has got a hymn, he says, "मैं तो मोल महंगी लई जी सटे, मेरी प्रीत गोबिंद स्यों जी ना सटे." He says, I don't want to lose my companionship with my mole, which is Gobind, because I bought it at a very expensive rate. I have to give my mind. Manade Ram liya hai mol. So this is a sort of fear. And then there's a Pao word. There's a Prem. Prem means a situation where the ego is totally gone. When the ego is gone, then the mind can reside into its own vessel. It's also an indication in Asa ki var. Ek Krishnang Sarvadeva Dev Devat Atma Atma Vasudevasya. The mool can give Atma a place in itself. Vas. The word Vasudev is not a word is used in a normal human nature. Means Vasudeva is a sentient word. That's why Krishna's father is Vasudev. But this is a Vedic term. Krishna is a man. The man can go and reside, and Vasudeva says its father. So this is how the whole process works. There are metaphors. So we have to connect through them. So Po and Pao, this is a combination which ultimately makes us Puran Brahm, and from there, then we are now teachers to educate the people who wants to go through this path. So that's why the Gurmat keeps on coming in different languages. When it came 100 years, 1,000 years ago, the language was not Gurmukhi. Language might be different, but the essence was same as what we are doing it now. Thank you.
Hanji, thank you, Virji. Hanji, I think another question that was coming was, is there any relationship or continuation from the five khand, the four bodies we covered previously, and this body? Hanji, Dilpit Virji?
I think this is summarizing the previous four bodies, as I said earlier, because the Dharam is the understanding, the knowledge, and then the planning, and then action, implementation comes. And then Sachkhand is the real experience, or we operate under his guidance. So the same, I think this whole body is telling us that how we implement that. So it is a complete continuation, and then it tells us that this is how we have to recreate ourselves, and that is where we will change. And then I would like to share another line. I think Gurjeet Virji used that Shabad, so I was looking into that. Jat Sat Sanjam Naam Hai Vin Naame Nirmal Na Hoye. And the how line of that Shabad is very, very interesting, and it struck me when I was reading that. It says, Pai Re Gurmukh Bujhe Koi Bin Bujhe Karam Kamavane Janam Padarth Koi. So again it says bin bujhe karam kamavane janam padarth khoye, that you lose the whole game, or you lose everything if you do things without understanding, or if you do any action without understanding the implications of that. And this is body is a very good example, that if we it tells us that this is what are the implementation, that is where Jat Pahara, Tiraj Sanyar, Ahran Mat Ved Hathyar. So when we use knowledge and our mind in combination, that is where we will do everything, and we will do the planning, that what is the implication of this, that is where the knowledge or Ved comes. So we should understand the implication of every action and then own up to those, and this is how the change will come in us. Otherwise there is no other way out, or there is no easy way out. Thank you.
Thank you, Vici. Eileen?
Yes, I guess with respect to your question about the khans being in here, I found that in the beginning, I felt very connected to the other khans because I was, excuse me, I was thinking about the turning side to side to side of this piece of metal and getting hammered, and that reminded me of different sides or different angles that might represent these khans as you keep turning and keep working and working and working at it. It's a long process. But then I also thought, my feeling was that it actually, this Pauri actually is like a full circle to the beginning of Japji, because I think of the beginning of Japji as talking a lot about the empty rituals, and I would sort of say that's it's like form over substance. And then here, it's the complete opposite. It's the substance over form. So first, you have to transform inside, and that feeds your actions, and you work from the inside out. And at the beginning of Japji, it was pointed out all the examples of working from the outside and being empty on the inside. So it sort of feels like a conclusion in that way.
Thank you, Ji. Ji, Paramjit Veer Ji.
Hanji, my view is that the first 37 paudis up to Sachkhand is the complete Japji Sahib message which Guru Sahib wanted to give, and this is stand-alone paudi for me. The way I look at that, here Guru Sahib has summarized the whole thing, what he has tried for us to understand in the first 37 paudis. Sachkhand is the ultimate goal, objective, and the final point up to which we can arrive at. And after that, what Guru Sahib is doing is telling us in summary, everything what he has talked about is that the only way to cultivate the Shabad in you to become Chara is one thing: you have to be patient, and that patience doesn't come because along with patience you have to control or calm, krodh, low, moh, hankar, which feeds into our sensory organs and make us do a lot of things which are not acceptable according to Guru Mat. Then Guru Sahib is giving this very, very beautiful analogy of using sunyara, goldsmith, and his working, that how much patience he has, how he converts, how he takes out impurities from gold through the process of developing that gold into jewelry and all that. So to me, this body is a standalone thing. Up to Sachkhand is the total destination. How to become Syara, that's the whole process. And here Guru Sahib is revisiting that and basically summarizing the whole thing what Guru Japji Sahib has said. That's the way I think.
Yeah, thank you, Virji. Ji, Gurjeet Virji.
Hanji Bishop. Virji, Dilpreet Singh has used a wonderful word, which is one of our, that's the ultimate padarth we have come to take, Janam padarth. The first padarth which we have to actually take is Gyan padarth, that give us mukti, mukt padarth, and then from there the next one is Nam padarth. And Nam padarth is Shabd Guru, and then at the same time you get the Janam. You basically reborn into Sachkhand. But these bodies I can easily connect. Jat Pahara Tira Sunyar is nothing but Dharamkhand. Aaron Mat Ved Hathiyar, when you're shaping, is Gyan Khand. Then from there, Aaron Mat Ved Hathiyar, Pau Khalla Agan Taptao. Then Taptao is your Sramkhand. And then the further two can be related. I'll join in later.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Virji. And so I think next week we will do the final slok and then the complete the Japji Sahib. So thanks again everyone for joining, and we will see you next week. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa,
Khalsa,
Vaheguru
Vaheguru
Ji
Ki
Ki Fateh
Fateh.
Ji.